Hey everybody, Pat Rigsby here again with another episode of the Wealthy Gym Owners, and I am with my friend and boardroom member and fitness entrepreneur extraordinaire, Luke Sullivan. So, welcome, Luke.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
So, Luke, you've got Pinnacle Fitness in Scottsdale. Tell us a little bit about what you do, what the business is like. Just give us kind of a lay of the land. Lay of the land.
Yeah, we opened up in 2010. What it looks like now is way different than it did in 2010, but we basically specialize in a 15 over population, and we kind of specialize in kind of the broken population. So we do more of the hip replacements, knee replacements, all that good stuff. So we have to kind of know a little bit more in terms of the body, in terms of how it moves and how to work around stuff. But we do all one-on-one training and we do small group training. And that's kind of been our sweet spot for the last 6 or 7, 8 years. And it's been good so far.
So, how big is your facility?
We are about 4,000 square feet. We moved here in 2020. So we started in 2010 in a like 1,600 square foot dungeon. And when you live in Scottsdale, a dungeon is not the best place to be, but we made it work. And then we moved to this location in 2020, which was bad timing, obviously, because of COVID. So we signed our lease in January and then started build out in March, and then we got shut down. So that was a big gulp all of a sudden when we had to figure out how to pay for everything and then open and then not open. But it's a great facility. It's a much better spot, much better foot traffic. So it's been a good location.
So, one of the really cool things that I feel like I'm getting to do by having guys like you that have been in boardroom and that sort of thing is to just kind of look at the trajectory of your business because I think in the entrepreneurial world, it gets very easy for people to see where somebody is, but they don't really understand how they got there or something like that. So, first of all, like, if you're okay with it, like, what kind of revenue did your business do last year?
Last year, we just finished at right at 900,000 for the year.
900,000 and 4,000 square feet. I mean, that's pretty awesome. So, but it's not always been 900. You didn't just fall out of bed and $900,000. So what did that kind of growth and improvement trajectory look like for you?
I would say the first 7, 8, 9 years were very sparse. When I first rented the facility, I can remember thinking to myself, like, they actually rented this to me. Like, do they not know I don't have any money? And I think I had maybe 5 clients, 6 clients, and I brought on another trainer who was a buddy of mine, and I had an independent contractor model, and he had about 10 people, and we pretty much lived on 6, $7,000 a month is what we kind of brought in income, and it was hard. And obviously, we grew. We were on the backside of a shopping center, so we didn't get a lot of traffic. And of course, at that time, I was a much better trainer than I was a business owner, so that learning curve was hard. And I kept that independent contractor model until probably 2017, 2018. And I can remember kind of making that switch. And that was obviously because we kind of went through some talks on that. And it was, I was at fault of giving too much upfront too early. So I would give my contractors much bigger percentages, and then they didn't really want to do what I wanted them to do. And I realized that it wasn't a great fit and it just caused a lot of headaches. So I let one of them go in like 2017. And I remember I went to my first ever seminar, which was, or whatever, it was a Perform Better thing out in Northern California. And when I left, my other independent contractor left his keys on my desk and said, I'm not going to work here anymore. And I'd known him for 10 years. And he literally, both the guys went down the parking lot to another gym and took all their clients there. And I thought, wow, what am I going to do? And basically, with the help of you, I basically made up that revenue in 6 weeks. So it showed me a lot in terms of, hey, if you're a little smarter with your business, you can do some really great things. And so as we move forward into 2018, 2019, 2020, we definitely were at a spot where I thought we could finally move. And I thought that would be a big help in terms of just a better location and kind of more showy. The old place had low ceilings. We had carpet. It was pretty rough. And we were able to kind of make some of those steps. And I remember I had been on your email list since like 2006 or seven, and I'd seen it, and then I think maybe I got off of it in 2015 for whatever reason. And then I met Kane Citizen over at Core at the time, and he said, "Hey, you should talk to Pat." And that's when I first got back into the game of, "Hey, I'm gonna start working with you." And I would say that was one of the biggest game changers there. And then from 2020, 21 obviously was a little bit tough in terms of business wise, but we came out of 2022. I think we did 424, and then we did 620 or 636, and then we did 900. So it's kind of steadily grown. And to think that I was making $6,000 when I scraping by on everything to kind of get through was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm flattered that you include my tiny contribution to all this, but I mean, I think the neat part about what you said up front was how you made it up in 6 weeks, right? Made up that lost revenue in 6 weeks. Man, I think that when somebody has some focus and some clarity and probably some urgency, eh, man, you can cover a lot of ground. And it certainly wasn't a lack of aptitude or access to good information or whatever else. It's just you had that kind of trigger or tipping point where it's like, okay, now I have the focus I need and the urgency I need to go and execute on all the things that I've probably had the potential to execute on for a little bit. And man, I mean, that's just started that whole domino effect. So I mean, that's awesome. But hopefully for people watching or listening or however they're consuming this conversation, yeah, even if you've been stuck, regardless of where the plateau is, 6 or 7,000 or 20,000 or whatever it is, like some focus and some urgency go a long way.
It does. And I think one of the best things that weekend that I went out to California was I met Dave Bulldog and I met Jeff. And I'm fairly shy by nature, but like those two guys just kind of popped out, and then I was hanging out with them. And literally, I had gotten that email from my independent contractor that he was leaving. And Jeff and Dave both kind of pulled me aside and said, "Hey, you should do it like this, make this happen." And I think when you have people that are like-minded and also people that have already done it before or been successful, they have a better understanding of it. So it kind of fast tracks you to where you would like to be. And a lot of times it's just a couple different things to do that can increase revenue by a tremendous amount. And when at that size, getting 10 clients was like a third of our revenue.
Yeah.
So it was massive.
For context, Dave Bolduc and Jeff Nelson are fellow boardroom members. So we got a fun little community there. So you're definitely the right people in the right moment.
There you go.
So 424 to mid 600s to 900. I mean, that's a heck of a jump each year, right? And for a lot of people, 424 is a huge number in its own right. And I'm sure when you got to that point, it was a big milestone or big number for you. So, what do you think happened between being at just over 400 to mid sixes and then just from mid sixes to 900? What were the things that were going on to allow you to make those kind of jumps with an already pretty impressive business?
Yeah, I would say this planner right here is actually one of the biggest things that I have done over the years that has increased the growth because it holds you accountable to what you're going to do. And I think that is what I learned was if I'm just consistent and I win each day or I win something each day, it really moves the needle long term. And I'm a numbers guy, so I just look at the numbers and I look at memberships and revenue and all this stuff every single day, multiple times a day. And I try to gamify it a little bit. But I think being a better planner and consistent, but also making it very much about the client. I mean, that's one thing that we really focus on in here. And I think when I bring on new staff, at first they're a little bit not understanding of the experience part. They're just about the workout. And I think once they start to gel with the team and they understand like, hey, this is what it's going to be, they get a much better feel of why we kind of set ourselves apart. and when we do price increases or when we do things like that, why we don't get a lot of pushback, and just why in general the people that we have here stay for years and years.
Yeah, the experiential part, just from the outside looking in, seems like it's a true differentiator for you. And then I mean, it's pretty full coaching market right now. I mean, that has to be a game changer. So you mentioned earlier you work with people who are typically 50 and over and broken. What do you do for them that sets you apart from the other people who are maybe trying to vie for their attention?
Yeah, I think some of it is, if you, well, first, once you kind of find your niche, that's kind of a big deal. And then if you can really fix something for them, and that's kind of what we've been good at, because we don't get a lot of, oh, I want fat loss or I want to be this weight. We don't get a lot of that, but we get someone that comes in, hey man, I've had knee pain for 3 years. What can you do? And in that first kind of 2 week trial period, if we get them not out of pain, but moving in the right direction, that usually moves the needle to a point where they're like, hey, this is something that like I want to continue, because this is a much different approach than what we're used to even in physical therapy. And most people don't realize that, like, once they get done with physical therapy, there's kind of that next step with that kind of reentry back into the world. And what does it look like safely? And I guess with this population, they like the fact that they're going to be under a watchful eye, and we know enough to not get them hurt or not take steps backward after they've just went through 3 or 4 months of rehab. So I think that part of it, and just the fact that there isn't anybody else under 50 here. So there's a culture of all these fairly successful people that have done well in business now get to kind of hang out in a exercise setting, and they have things in common, and the 20-year-old on the treadmill running around isn't there. And I think that's been a good culture perspective, and in terms of everybody not feeling intimidated or uncomfortable about someone that's super fit in the room. Like, there just isn't that person.
Very cool. So the atmosphere, the culture, kind of dialing in who your niche was. What else has allowed you to, I mean, basically more than double in 2 years?
Yeah, I think I was doing B&I groups just because that's what I thought was a good networking type of thing. And but it took a lot of time, and you have to really nurture that system. And the more we grew, the more I realized that I could probably use my marketing money better or more wisely. And that, I just think, is where we started to do more of the Facebook ads. And from 2010 to 2020, I'd probably done Facebook ads and Google ads multiple times and never had any success. And I had big agencies, small agencies, all that stuff. And it just, obviously with BJ's help, it just started to work. And the last couple of years, I don't really worry about any leads coming in. Like, it's just kind of like clockwork. And I think we focus on different times of the year, really getting increases in like Google reviews. And as soon as we do that, we get 25 or 30 in a 6 week span. We end up getting a lot more phone calls, that kind of stuff. So we just kind of work the system a little bit, and then just kind of figure out what's the best way, and then kind of double down on those systems to get more and more people to come in.
So planning, kind of optimize your marketing, create some more leverage, better experience. How has your role changed in that 2 year span?
I am now like 98% off the floor. So that's probably the biggest one, is that the day to day is different. I still do the assessments just because of the selling part, but I would say the staff doesn't see me as much. The clients, they come, like, I try to make sure that I'm on the floor for a period of time just to kind of chat with people and kind of keep that culture. But for the most part, I've had much more freedom of, I take my kids to school in the morning, so I don't get here till 9:30. I used to be here almost every day at 6 a.m. So I wouldn't see my wife, I wouldn't see my kids in the morning. So that's been a big game changer and a big role change for me. And just not having to work around all the client schedules and kind of bending to their schedule and having to come in on a Saturday and stuff like that. So that's probably one of the biggest ones, and that's allowed us to grow. And we've been able to, actually, now just this last weekend, we signed a new lease for a 2,100 square foot extension or expansion. So now that one will be all personal training, and this will be all semi-private training. So it's been a nice progression of less hands-on with the clients and a little bit more hands-on with the staff.
Man, I mean, so you kind of just checked every corner of this, from planning to marketing to experience to operations and your role. I mean, that's like the blueprint for doubling a business. So that's good. And my next question, you already kind of beat me to the punch. I was going to say, well, what's next? Like what's on the horizon? But a 2,100 square foot expansion's on the horizon.
Yeah, it's exciting because obviously building is fun. When you kind of are used to doing kind of the same thing, sometimes it's Groundhog's Day sometimes. But getting the space has been super exciting. And the fact that we just had our 15-year anniversary party and I was able to kind of unveil the grand opening of this new space is going to be probably sometime in May, but I was able to let everyone know that we secured the space and it's going to be for private training and this is what we're going to do in there. So the excitement was really nice. And now looking at contractors and equipment and kind of how to make that experience even better for them is pretty cool. And obviously, with that, then you start setting some really big goals of revenue and time off and stuff like that, and family trips and what else we can do. And it's pretty exciting and it's pretty like the staff is excited. We're growing as a staff now. I think we're up to 10 employees, which to me seems really big. I remember in my staff meetings, I was like, oh, there's three of us, and I would have three pieces of paper to pass out. And now I feel like I print off a book. So it's different, but it's a good problem to have. And obviously growth is good, and we have some pretty big goals to hit this year.
So, I mean, the title of this podcast is Wealthy Gym Owners. So I want to talk with you for a minute and maybe shift gears a little bit and just say, okay, how has, this growth and this financial growth, maybe more specifically, is small business owners, let's face it, most single site small business owners don't get to $900,000 in a year. How has this kind of financial growth impacted you? I mean, kind of getting to that kind of wealthy gym owner tier or level.
Yeah, the biggest part is probably with the family. That's probably the biggest one. But to think about, I know we talk at some of the boardroom meetings that like the certain population of like, or like what percentage of gyms make X amount of dollars. And to think that a little small town kid out of Wisconsin could do almost $1 million seems, especially in a gym setting, is always kind of humbling to me. But I would say my wife is a pretty enthusiastic person. And if I'm gone all the time, like it makes life very tough. And not being able to see my kids was tough. So, from the perspective of she's cut back on work. So, she doesn't work on Fridays now. She kind of chooses when she wants to work. Like now, she doesn't, when they ask her to cover other doctors, she doesn't have to do it. So, that one is probably one of the big shifts that I've noticed in making my life easier. There's a whole happy life, happy wife, whatever, however that works. That's kind of a thing, apparently. And just the ability to, if I have to do something, I don't have to come into work every day. And I'm gonna go see my parents in Wisconsin over when I go to the boardroom meeting in Chicago. So being able to take a week here and there and not have to really worry about everything that's going on within these four walls, that peace of mind is huge. And we're gonna do this expansion, and I've kind of figured out that I'm not gonna have to get a loan. And that loan is for almost, I mean, it would probably be for 180K. And with recurring income, it's just kind of a nice knowing that what you're going to have every month and that peace of mind of not having to pay 7 or 8% on a business loan or whatever it is now is huge. And that stress of I'm guaranteeing this, and if something happens, all that stuff. So we just bought a house this last year that we had to sell our house during COVID to pay for the gym build out. And now this time around, we're just going to use the money that the gym makes every month to be able to cover it. So those things are just peace of mind is better than, or probably the biggest one, just because the family's taken care of and everything kind of moves forward.
That's awesome. So, I mean, Luke, you knocked it out of the park. It's awesome to be able to come and hang out with you. And I mean, it sounds like we're on pace to have your first ever seven-figure year here in 2025. So
Uh,
that's exciting. And just knowing where your numbers are for January thus far, it seems like we're right there, right?
yes, indeed.
So if somebody wants to learn more about you, Pinnacle Fitness, is there a way they can learn more? Where can they follow you, pay attention to what you're doing, how you're growing?
Yeah, our website is pinnaclefitnessaz.com. That's where they can kind of understand a little bit more about what we do as a gym. But if you need to get a hold of me personally, obviously you can just email me at luke@pinnaclefitnessaz.com and I will be happy to help.
Awesome. Well, Luke, thanks for coming on and sharing your story. I mean, it's inspirational. It's fun to just hang out and visit with you as an added bonus for me. And that's another episode of the Wealthy Gym Owners. Thanks, guys.